A warm welcome from the HC Biologics site here in Heidelberg, Germany. My name is Mario Kraft. I'm leading the process development team at the site, and I'm very proud to present at the BIO International Virtual Theater 2020 the capabilities of HC Biologics for plasmid DNA manufacturing and to give insights on how we can support you to support clients on all services relating on this. The Heidelberg site was one of the pioneers of plasmid DNA manufacturing, starting first activities around 10 years ago. Based on the experience we gained over this time, we have established platform production process in the form of a toolbox system to offer customized manufacturing service for the supply of high-quality non- and GMP-grade plasmids. By this presentation, I will outline this toolbox system and I will give insights on the HC Biologics network. The concept of gene and cell therapy is far from new, with initial studies started over 20 years ago. However, in the past few years, an explosion of interest in this area has gone. Important starting material for such approach is plasmid DNA. But not this is required in this area only. DNA vaccination, mRNA drugs, as well as cell-free expression and CRISPR-Cas applications are further growing fields where plasmid DNA as starting material is fundamental. With improving levels of clinical success and the progression of products into late-phase clinical studies, a necessarily need of increased amounts of plasmid DNA manufactured at larger scales is expected. Since the need to manufacture greater amounts of plasmid DNA will increase over the next year, technical solutions are necessary to enable these requirements. To meet rising demands of plasmid DNA, we have established scalable production platform processes as a toolbox system. By this, low demands of plasmid DNA with less than 10 grams per batch needed for niche therapies with less than 10,000 patients, but also the supply of plasmid DNA up to kilograms per year can be accomplished. Generic plasmid DNA manufacturing processes are not often very much helpful, in particular if different plasmids are needed. There are so many types and variants of plasmids available, with a broad range of copy numbers per cell, with a single copy up to several hundred copies per cell, with different sizes and genetic elements, as well as complexity. So we have recognized at an early stage that such a generic process is not expedient, and therefore we have established versatile platform processes where we can target plasmid DNA manufacturing at different levels. These levels are the strain as well as the manufacturing process per se. For plasmid DNA production, common or special strains are needed to propagate these plasmids, as well as different manufacturing processes are also required to meet quality specifications needed for the final application. Our toolbox system has a platform character and was so designed to address all of these points in order to establish a customized manufacturing process. Since most of the clients have already established their plasmid, we can offer cell line development as a first level in order to screen for a strain, allowing high yield production of the plasmid of interest. For this, we can offer our strain DH5 alpha. This is the most used host for plasmid DNA manufacturing. This strain is well characterized in terms of genotype and phenotype with a clear strain and transparent history. If this strain shows low yield of plasmid DNA or does not fit the client's construct, we can screen our strain library for an appropriate host in addition. This strain is based on a wild-type E. coli and was generated by directed editing of the genomic information, by removal of critical genetic regions, transposons, IS elements, as well as genes that hindering plasmid DNA manufacturing. By the same way, we have also added genes that are enhancing this approach. So by cell line development, we can screen these different strains in order to select a host that fits best to client's plasmid. Here I want to highlight that all of these strains are proprietary and a part of our freedom to operate service. For niche application or rare plasmids, where specific hosts are needed, also strains supplied by third party can be tested by us. But this is then not a part of our freedom to operate business. In addition to the different strains, we have established different platform manufacturing processes suited for several plasmid types, single copy up to high copy plasmids, as well as specific plasmids like CpG-less plasmids. These processes include fermentation, cell lysis, precipitation steps if applicable, and purification. The fermentation processes are often straightforward, a batch or fed batch process. We have several fermentation processes in place based on different media as well as carbon sources. We can screen these processes in point of these parameters and additionally in point of feeding, starvation, as well as different temperature profiles if the designated plasmid is temperature sensitive, in order to select a fermentation process that also fits best to the host plasmid combination selected before. Often our fermentation process can be adapted onto clients' constructs where limited or no big efforts are needed. After fermentation, the release of plasmid DNA will be applied by alkaline cell lysis by a batch or continuous mode, where at latest is more efficient. Most critical process-related impurities are RNA and endotoxin. Therefore, we establish different processes in order to remove these impurities, especially RNA. This can be accomplished by RNase treatment, this is the simplest way, or since this is not always possible, if plasmid DNA will be used as starting material for the production of mRNA drugs, for instance, we also establish precipitation steps for RNA removal. Here, more efforts are needed to adapt such step onto client's plasmid, since fine-tuned conditions of precipitations are required in order to avoid co-precipitation of the plasmid DNA or inefficient precipitation of the RNA. If RNA removal via enzymatic digest or precipitation is not possible, we have also established a set of different purification trains, including one single step. This is useful if RNA can be removed by RNase treatment or precipitation, or up to a 3-step process in order to supply highly pure plasmid DNA. I will come back this at later time. So by this toolbox system, we have several manufacturing processes in place that can be used as a basis for the establishment of a customized plasmid DNA production process that fits best to clients' constructs. Lastly, by the network of HSC biologics, plasmid DNA can be manufactured at different scales, starting from 1 liter non-GMP scale up to 1,000 liter GMP in Heidelberg. If higher amounts of plasmid DNA are required, we can also produce that in our Copenhagen facility, where we have a microbial line with 2 times 1,500 liters, as well as in our Japanese site in Chiba with a 3,500 liter bioreactor. By this toolbox system, HSC Biologics is very flexible and provides freedom to operate tools in order to manufacture highly pure plasmid DNA suitable for tox as well as all clinical studies for all these applications indicated below. The next slide summarizes a case study for a commercial process for plasmid DNA manufacturing for a vaccine. This project was transferred to Heidelberg 8 years ago, and the process is here shown on high level. Starting point is a master or working cell bank. The manufacturing of a GMP cell bank and the storage as well is also standalone service here in Heidelberg. Based on this cell bank, a pre-culture at shake flask scale will be prepared, which will be then used to inoculate the 1,000 liter main culture in a fully controlled multi-purpose stainless steel fermenter. After approximately 15 hours of cultivation, this is a batch process in this case, the cells were harvested by continuous centrifugation and normally directly processed. If a portion of the cell paste will be used for downstream, or the upstream and downstream have to be decoupled due to timely aspects, an interim storage of the cell paste is possible too. Cells were lysed by alkaline cell lysers in a continuous mode using a static mixer. If the client has already established their process, we can also do a batch lysis in a stirred tank. But as I mentioned before, we recommend to use a static mixer since this is more efficient and gentle. After cell lysis and after several filtration steps, the plasmid DNA will be captured and purified via a single column step using anion exchange chromatography. The filtration steps upfront purification are very important to remove antitoxin. Afterwards, purified plasmid DNA will be filtered again and formulated. The process transferred and scaled here in Heidelberg is a lean process, allowing us to perform weekly manufacturing cycles, meaning that one entire batch, including up and downstream, per week can be performed. Since 2013, this process was scaled up by several non-GMP runs up to 1000 GMP, with 9 GMP campaigns up to now. As shown here, the established process for this commercial product is very robust, producible and scalable. On the left side is shown the overlay of the growth, the cell density of the main culture for all runs during scale-up and for some GMP runs. By this process, also high consistent levels of plasmid DNA were achieved, with up to 100 grams of purified plasmid DNA per 1000 liter batch. So independent on scale, around 0.1 gram of highly pure GMP-grade plasmid DNA can be manufactured by this process. The next slide shows that we also achieved outstanding quality attributes for the different tech transfer and GMP runs. Independent on scale, a consistent low level of antitoxin, as well as low leftover of RNA, this is not shown here, in parallel with an outstanding reproducible product quality in point of the abundance of supercoiled plasmid DNA was achieved. A very consistent supercoiled plasmid DNA content of 98% and above were achieved for all runs. Based on the analytical methods already established for the analysis of in-process controls and the release of final drug substance, we were able to release highly pure GMP-grade plasmid DNA from 9 batches so far. Based on this case study, we have established platform processes for other plasmid DNA types and variants. We implemented cell lines as well as fermentation and purification processes, as I mentioned before, with our toolbox system. The slide now gives an overview of the different purification processes of our toolbox system and the outcome. This is very important to have, since most of the plasmids behave different, as well as different specifications of the final bulk are required. Our downstream process could be based on a single column step, this is an anion exchange step, or a purification train including up to 3 steps that can be adapted onto client's construct. Normally, we use a single column step if RNA can be removed prior to downstream enzymatically or by precipitation. If this is not possible, we can switch to an alternative downstream process to provide highly pure plasmid DNA by that. Depending on client's needs, we can screen our 2 or 3-step downstream processes to adapt these onto client's constructs. For instance, if special requirements exist for the abundance of supercoiled plasmid DNA, we can switch from a 2-step process and implement additional Higgs step. If not needed, we have commonly a 2-step process where the second step, this is a mixed mode step, is mostly needed for RNA removal. The HPC chromatogram at the bottom of the slide shows the quality of purified plasmid DNA from a single column step with RNase treatment, this is the red trace, versus a product isolated by a 3-step downstream without enzymatic digest, this is the blue trace. So independent on purification strategy applied, we can provide highly pure plasmid DNA with high quality attributes. We have low leftover of RNA and genomic DNA with less than 5 or 2% respectively, and a high abundance of supercoiled plasmid DNA can be provided in parallel. To give an estimation here, by the established processes around 10 to 30 milligrams of purified single copy plasmid up to 0.3 to 0.4 gram of purified high copy, as well as CBG less plasmids, can be achieved per fermentation liter. Finally, why to produce plasmid DNA at HEC Biologics? HEC Biologics has a long expertise in plasmid DNA manufacturing, doing this since 10 years with an excellent track record. Based on our expertise, we have several characterized cell lines available with a clear strain history. We established platform processes for fermentation, cell lysis, and purification. We can adapt all of these steps together or independent on each other onto client's construct by a fast manner. By this, we can offer customized manufacturing processes as a freedom to operate service. With our well-trained and experienced teams in process development, manufacturing, QA, and QC as well, we can guarantee to provide best service. We have all relevant analytical methods already established and could demonstrate by a number of GMP batches to produce a commercial plasmid DNA with outstanding yield and quality attributes that is approved so far by USDA and currently used for DNA vaccination. By this platform tool that facilitates customized plasmid DNA manufacturing on a freedom to operate basis, HEC Biologics with the different sites across the globe is the right partner and the right place for reliable plasmid services. Thank you very much.